What if I told you that the greatest threat to humanity isn't ignorance, malice, or even chaos, but something far more insidious, something we all carry within us, yet rarely acknowledge? It's not a lack of knowledge, it's a refusal to think. This is the story of stupidity, not as a flaw of intellect, but as a choice we make every day. And understanding it might just be the key to saving ourselves. The room is silent except for the faint hum of a clock ticking, its rhythm steady and unyielding, much like the march of human history. Imagine this. A man stands in a crowded square, his voice rising above the murmurs of the masses. He speaks truths that cut through the fog of complacency, yet no one listens. Not because they cannot hear him, but because they refuse to think about what he says. This refusal to engage, to question, to challenge is not ignorance. It is something far more insidious. It is stupidity. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a man who stared into the abyss of tyranny and refused to look away, called it humanity's greatest threat. Against stupidity, he wrote, we are defenseless. But why? Why does stupidity persist even when intelligence flowers? What makes otherwise rational beings abandon reason and embrace conformity, fear, or apathy? Today, we will unravel this paradox, not as an academic exercise, but as a mirror held up to our own lives. Stupidity, according to Bonhoeffer, is not the absence of knowledge. It is not the inability to solve equations or memorize facts. No, stupidity is deeper, darker, and far more dangerous. It is the deliberate suspension of critical thought, the choice to stop questioning, to let others do the thinking for us. In his time, Bonhoeffer saw how ordinary people, neighbors, friends, colleagues, became complicit in horrors simply by refusing to reflect on their actions. They followed orders, repeated slogans, and conformed to ideologies without ever pausing to ask if these things aligned with truth or justice. Modern psychology echoes this insight. Cognitive biases, those invisible forces shaping our perceptions, often lead us astray. Confirmation bias whispers, seek only what supports your beliefs. The Dunning-Kruger effect assures us, you know enough. Groupthink demands, blend in, don't rock the boat. Together they form a perfect storm, pulling individuals toward collective irrationality. Yet here lies the crux of the matter. Stupidity thrives not because we lack information, but because we resist discomfort. Thinking deeply requires effort, vulnerability, and courage. Stupidity offers ease, certainty, and safety. Which would you choose? Consider the world around you. Social media algorithms curate content tailored to your preferences, creating echo chambers where dissenting voices are drowned out. Corporate scandals unfold as employees turn a blind eye to unethical practices, convincing themselves it's someone else's problem. Political movements gain momentum not through reasoned debate, but through emotional appeals and tribal loyalty. These phenomena are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a broader malaise. Bonhoeffer understood this well. He warned that stupidity spreads like a contagion, infecting communities and nations until critical thought becomes a rare commodity. Once lost, it leaves behind a void filled by manipulation, exploitation, and chaos. But how does this happen? How do intelligent, capable individuals fall prey to such forces? The answer lies not in their intellect, but in their willingness, or unwillingness, to confront uncertainty. To resist stupidity is to embrace ambiguity, to sit with questions that have no easy answers, to endure the unease of standing alone. Let us delve further into the mechanics of stupidity. Picture a bustling office floor where rumors circulate faster than memos. A report surfaces alleging misconduct within the company. Some employees dismiss it outright, clinging to the comfort of denial. Others acknowledge it, but convince themselves it's beyond their control. Only a handful dare to investigate, risking ridicule or retaliation. Here, stupidity manifests in different forms: passive acceptance, active avoidance, and outright denial. Each stems from the same root, the fear of disruption. Change disrupts routines, challenges assumptions, and forces accountability. Stupidity, then, is not merely a failure to think. It is a refusal to act. It is the decision to prioritize harmony over honesty, convenience over conscience. And while it may seem harmless in isolation, its cumulative effect can be catastrophic. History bears witness to this truth. From the rise of authoritarian regimes to the perpetuation of systemic injustices, stupidity has played a starring role in humanity's darkest chapters. Yet there is hope. Resistance begins with awareness. Bonhoeffer himself embodied this principle, choosing to speak out against injustice despite the risks. His example teaches us that resisting stupidity requires more than intellect. It demands moral courage. Courage to question authority, to challenge norms, to stand apart when necessary. Courage to admit when we are wrong and seek better understanding. Psychological research supports this notion. Studies show that mindfulness practices enhance cognitive flexibility, enabling individuals to recognize and counteract biases. Exposure to diverse perspectives fosters empathy and reduces prejudice. Acts of dissent, however small, create ripple effects that inspire others to follow suit. Collectively, these efforts chip away at the walls of stupidity, opening pathways to clarity and progress. But change starts within. Each of us must take responsibility for our thoughts and actions, recognizing that silence in the face of wrongdoing is itself a form of complicity. As Bonhoeffer famously said, not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act. Now imagine a society where critical thinking reigns supreme, a world where individuals value truth over comfort, reflection over reaction, and integrity over conformity. Such a vision may seem idealistic, even naive, given the prevalence of stupidity today. Yet it is precisely this idealism that fuels resistance. Every act of questioning, every moment of introspection, every instance of speaking truth to power contributes to a larger movement. Slowly but surely, cracks appear in the facade of stupidity, letting light seep through. This light reveals a profound truth. Humanity's greatest strength lies not in its capacity for knowledge, but in its potential for wisdom. Wisdom emerges when we combine intellect with humility, curiosity with compassion, skepticism with openness. It is the antidote to stupidity, the key to unlocking our shared potential. So, I leave you with this challenge. Next time you encounter an idea that challenges your worldview, pause. Resist the urge to dismiss it outright. Instead, lean into the discomfort, explore the unknown, and allow yourself to grow. For in doing so, you reclaim not just your mind, but your humanity. To truly understand the pervasive nature of stupidity, we must first examine the intricate web of cognitive biases that shape our perception of reality. Cognitive biases are mental shortcuts, evolutionary tools designed to help humans make quick decisions in uncertain environments. However, these shortcuts often lead us astray, especially in complex modern societies where nuanced thinking is required. Take confirmation bias, for instance. This bias compels us to seek out information that aligns with our pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. It creates a feedback loop, reinforcing our views and making us less receptive to alternative perspectives. When combined with the Dunning-Kruger effect, a phenomenon where individuals overestimate their competence due to a lack of self-awareness, confirmation bias becomes particularly potent. Together, they create a fertile ground for stupidity to flourish. Consider the impact of social media platforms, which amplify these biases exponentially. Algorithms prioritize content that generates engagement, often favoring sensational headlines and emotionally charged narratives over balanced, factual reporting. Users scroll through curated feeds that reflect their preferences, rarely encountering opposing viewpoints. Over time, this creates an illusion of consensus, where users believe their opinions are universally accepted simply because they rarely see anything to the contrary. This digital echo chamber not only reinforces existing biases, but also erodes critical thinking skills. People begin to accept information at face value, trusting the algorithm rather than scrutinizing the source. The result: a population increasingly susceptible to misinformation, conspiracy theories, and propaganda, all hallmarks of collective stupidity. But cognitive biases extend beyond individual behavior. They permeate group dynamics as well. Groupthink, a term coined by psychologist Irving Janis, describes how cohesive groups prioritize unanimity over rational decision-making. In pursuit of harmony, members suppress dissenting opinions, leading to poor judgments and disastrous outcomes. Historical examples abound. The Bay of Pigs invasion, the Challenger space shuttle disaster, and countless corporate failures all stemmed from groupthink. Within such environments, stupidity thrives because questioning authority or challenging the status quo is seen as disruptive. Individuals conform not out of conviction, but out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being ostracized. And so, they surrender their autonomy, allowing the group to dictate their thoughts and actions. What makes cognitive biases so insidious is their invisibility. Unlike overt acts of malice, biases operate beneath the surface, subtly influencing our decisions without our conscious awareness. We believe ourselves to be rational, objective thinkers, yet our minds betray us at every turn. This disconnect between perception and reality is central to Bonhoeffer's concept of stupidity. He recognized that stupidity is not a lack of intelligence, but a refusal to acknowledge our limitations. Intelligent people can, and often do, fall victim to stupidity precisely because they underestimate its power. They assume their intellect protects them, failing to realize that intelligence alone is insufficient without self-awareness and humility. To combat stupidity, we must first become aware of these biases. Mindfulness practices offer one avenue for cultivating this awareness. By observing our thoughts without judgment, we learn to identify patterns of irrationality and interrupt automatic responses. For example, when confronted with conflicting information, instead of reflexively dismissing it, we can pause and ask ourselves, why am I reacting this way? What assumptions am I making? Am I seeking truth, or am I defending my ego? These simple questions can break the cycle of bias-driven stupidity, paving the way for more thoughtful and deliberate decision-making. However, awareness is only the first step. To truly resist stupidity, we must actively seek diversity of thought. Surrounding ourselves with people who share our views may feel comfortable, but it limits our growth. Engaging with those who hold different perspectives challenges us to refine our arguments, test our assumptions, and expand our understanding. Disagreement, though uncomfortable, is essential for intellectual development. It forces us to articulate our beliefs clearly and defend them rigorously, strengthening both our convictions and our capacity for empathy. In this way, diversity becomes a safeguard against stupidity, fostering environments where critical thinking can thrive. Conformity plays a pivotal role in the propagation of stupidity, acting as both a cause and a consequence. Psychologist Solomon Asch's famous experiments demonstrated the powerful pull of social pressure. Participants were asked to match line lengths, a task so straightforward that errors should have been virtually non-existent. Yet when surrounded by Confederates deliberately giving incorrect answers, many participants conformed, providing wrong responses despite knowing better. This experiment underscores a fundamental truth. Humans are inherently social creatures, wired to seek acceptance and avoid rejection. When faced with conflicting information, we often prioritize belonging over accuracy, sacrificing our autonomy in the process. Asch's findings resonate deeply with Bonhoeffer's observations during the Nazi regime. Ordinary Germans, bombarded with propaganda and peer pressure, acquiesced to policies they might otherwise have opposed. Their compliance was not born of malice, but of a desire to fit in, to avoid standing out, to escape the stigma of dissent. Conformity in this context becomes a form of stupidity, a willful abdication of moral responsibility disguised as pragmatism. It allows individuals to absolve themselves of guilt by shifting accountability onto the group. After all, if everyone else is doing it, how bad can it be? Modern parallels abound. Consider workplace cultures where unethical practices go unchallenged because employees fear retribution or ridicule, or political climates where voters blindly support candidates endorsed by their tribe, regardless of policy positions. In each case, conformity overrides critical thought, perpetuating cycles of irrationality and harm. The irony is that conformity promises safety, yet it often leads to greater peril. By suppressing dissent, groups miss opportunities for innovation, overlook warning signs, and exacerbate crises. History shows us that the most catastrophic failures, from financial collapses to environmental disasters, are often rooted in unchecked conformity. Breaking free from conformity requires courage, a quality Bonhoeffer exemplified throughout his life. Courage in this sense is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. It means voicing unpopular opinions, asking difficult questions, and taking stands that may isolate us from our peers. Such acts of defiance are not easy, nor are they guaranteed to succeed. But they are necessary if we hope to resist the tide of stupidity. Each act of dissent sends ripples through the system, inspiring others to reconsider their assumptions and reclaim their agency. Psychological research highlights the importance of role models in fostering courage. Seeing others challenge norms emboldens us to do the same. Stories of whistleblowers, activists, and everyday heroes remind us that resistance is possible, even in the face of overwhelming odds. These narratives serve as catalysts for change, demonstrating that individual actions can spark collective transformation. They also underscore a vital lesson. Courage is contagious. When one person dares to speak up, others find the strength to follow. Ultimately, resisting conformity is about reclaiming our humanity. It is about recognizing that true connection comes not from blind agreement, but from authentic engagement. By embracing disagreement and celebrating diversity, we create spaces where critical thinking can flourish. We move closer to a world where stupidity loses its grip, replaced by wisdom, empathy, and mutual respect. Denial and avoidance represent two of stupidity's most insidious manifestations. While conformity involves outward capitulation to external pressures, denial and avoidance occur internally, as individuals shield themselves from uncomfortable truths. These mechanisms function as psychological defenses, protecting the ego from pain, guilt, or cognitive dissonance. However, they come at a steep cost: the erosion of personal integrity and the perpetuation of systemic harm. Denial operates by distorting reality, allowing individuals to reinterpret events in ways that minimize their significance or shift blame onto others. For example, a smoker might downplay the risks of tobacco use, rationalizing their habit as harmless, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Similarly, citizens living under oppressive regimes may convince themselves that atrocities committed by their government are exaggerated or justified, thereby absolving themselves of moral responsibility. Denial enables stupidity by severing the link between action and consequence, creating a false sense of security that blinds individuals to the long-term implications of their choices. Avoidance, on the other hand, takes a subtler approach. Rather than denying reality outright, avoidant individuals sidestep difficult issues altogether, retreating into distractions or trivial pursuits. They bury themselves in work, entertainment, or social obligations, anything to avoid confronting the uncomfortable. This strategy provides temporary relief, but ultimately exacerbates the problem. Unaddressed issues fester, growing more complex and intractable over time. Meanwhile, the individual remains trapped in a cycle of evasion, unable to break free without significant effort. Bonhoeffer understood the dangers of denial and avoidance intimately. As a theologian and activist, he witnessed firsthand how these tendencies enabled the horrors of the Holocaust. Ordinary Germans, faced with mounting evidence of genocide, chose to look away, focusing instead on their daily lives and immediate concerns. Their inaction allowed evil to flourish unchecked, proving that silence is indeed complicity. Bonhoeffer's response was to confront the truth head-on, no matter how painful. He recognized that avoiding discomfort only postpones inevitable reckoning, whereas facing it directly opens the door to healing and redemption. Today, denial and avoidance continue to plague society. Climate change serves as a prime example. Despite decades of scientific warnings, many individuals and institutions delay meaningful action, prioritizing short-term profits over long-term survival. The reasons vary. Some deny the severity of the crisis, while others simply prefer not to think about it. But the outcome remains the same: stagnation. Progress stalls as leaders dither and citizens disengage, leaving future generations to bear the brunt of our collective failure. Overcoming denial and avoidance requires radical honesty. We must confront our fears, acknowledge our mistakes, and accept responsibility for our roles in perpetuating harm. This process is neither quick nor easy. It demands vulnerability, patience, and resilience. Yet it is also profoundly liberating. By shedding illusions and embracing reality, we reclaim our power to effect change. We transform stupidity into wisdom, passivity into purpose, despair into hope. One effective strategy for combating denial and avoidance is journaling. Writing forces us to articulate our thoughts clearly, exposing inconsistencies and contradictions that might otherwise remain hidden. It also provides a safe space to explore difficult emotions, reducing the temptation to suppress or ignore them. Regular reflection helps build self-awareness, equipping us to recognize and address destructive patterns before they spiral out of control. Another powerful tool is community accountability. Sharing our struggles with trusted friends or mentors creates a support network that encourages transparency and growth. Knowing that others are watching and caring motivates us to stay vigilant, resisting the pull of denial and avoidance. Together, we can hold each other accountable, ensuring that none of us falls prey to the seductive allure of stupidity. Resistance to stupidity is not merely an individual endeavor, it is a collective movement. Every act of questioning, every instance of dissent, sends ripples through the fabric of society, inspiring others to follow suit. These ripples accumulate, gaining momentum until they become waves of change. Bonhoeffer's legacy exemplifies this principle. Though his resistance ultimately cost him his life, his courage inspired countless others to stand firm in the face of tyranny. His writings continue to resonate today, reminding us that even in the darkest times, light can prevail. Resistance begins with small, seemingly insignificant actions. A teacher challenging outdated curriculum, a journalist uncovering corruption, a citizen voting against party lines. Individually, these acts may appear inconsequential, but collectively, they reshape the cultural landscape. They demonstrate that stupidity is not invincible, that critical thinking can triumph over apathy and conformity. They remind us that change is possible, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Moreover, resistance fosters resilience. Each time we push back against stupidity, we strengthen our resolve, building the confidence needed to tackle larger challenges. We learn to navigate uncertainty, to embrace complexity, to trust in our ability to adapt and grow. This resilience becomes a cornerstone of wisdom, enabling us to face adversity with grace and determination. Ultimately, resisting stupidity is an act of love, for ourselves, for others, for the world. It is a commitment to truth, to justice, to the betterment of humanity. It is a declaration that we refuse to settle for mediocrity, that we demand more from ourselves and from society. And it is a promise that we will never stop striving for a brighter, wiser future. So, I leave you with this final thought. Stupidity is not an immutable force. It is a choice. A choice to stop thinking, to stop questioning, to stop caring. But it is also a choice we can reject. By embracing critical thought, by cultivating courage, by standing together in solidarity, we can dismantle the structures of stupidity and build something new in their place. Something beautiful, something wise, something human. Stupidity is not merely an individual failing. It is often embedded within systems, social, political, economic, that incentivize irrational behavior. These systems are designed to perpetuate themselves, rewarding conformity and punishing dissent. Understanding this systemic dimension is crucial if we hope to dismantle stupidity at its roots. Bonhoeffer recognized this dynamic during his resistance against the Nazi regime. He saw how institutions manipulated language, distorted truths, and exploited human fears to maintain control. Propaganda painted atrocities as necessities, bureaucracy obscured accountability, and fear silenced opposition. The result was a society where stupidity became institutionalized, normalized, and even celebrated. Modern parallels abound. Consider corporate cultures that prioritize profit over ethics. Employees are conditioned to view success through narrow metrics, revenue growth, shareholder value, while ignoring broader impacts like environmental degradation or worker exploitation. When scandals inevitably arise, leaders deflect blame onto rogue actors or unforeseen circumstances, absolving the system itself of responsibility. This sleight of hand ensures that the underlying structures remain intact, allowing stupidity to persist unchecked. Similarly, political systems often reward short-term thinking over long-term planning. Politicians focus on immediate gains, election victories, approval ratings at the expense of sustainable solutions. Policies are crafted to appease voters rather than address root causes, creating cycles of crisis and reaction. Citizens, bombarded with simplistic narratives and polarizing rhetoric, struggle to discern fact from fiction. In such environments, critical thought becomes a liability, while blind allegiance offers rewards. Stupidity thrives because it aligns with the incentives baked into these systems. Education systems also play a role in sustaining stupidity. Traditional models emphasize rote memorization and standardized testing over creativity and critical analysis. Students learn to regurgitate information rather than question assumptions, producing graduates ill-equipped to navigate complexity. While some educators strive to foster independent thinking, they often face resistance from administrators, parents, or policymakers who prioritize measurable outcomes over intellectual growth. The result is a generation trained to conform rather than innovate, a perfect breeding ground for stupidity. To combat systemic stupidity, we must first identify its mechanisms. Language, for instance, serves as both a tool and a weapon. Institutions use euphemisms to obscure reality, framing harmful actions in benign terms. Military campaigns become peacekeeping missions. Tax cuts for the wealthy transform into economic stimulus, and surveillance programs masquerade as national security. By stripping words of their meaning, these systems erode our ability to think critically. To resist, we must reclaim language, demanding clarity and accountability. Every time we call out doublespeak or insist on precise terminology, we chip away at the foundations of stupidity. Accountability is another key battleground. Systems thrive when individuals evade responsibility, hiding behind anonymity or collective decision-making. Breaking this pattern requires transparency and vigilance. Whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and grassroots activists all play vital roles in exposing wrongdoing and holding power to account. Their efforts remind us that no institution is infallible, that scrutiny is essential for progress. Supporting these voices strengthens the fabric of society, ensuring that stupidity cannot hide behind walls of privilege or authority. Ultimately, dismantling systemic stupidity demands collective action. Individuals alone cannot overthrow entrenched structures. Change requires collaboration, coordination, and courage. Movements like civil rights, environmental advocacy, and anti-corruption campaigns demonstrate the power of unity in challenging oppressive systems. They show us that resistance is not futile, that solidarity can overcome even the most daunting obstacles. By working together, we amplify our impact, transforming isolated acts of defiance into tidal waves of transformation. One of the most perplexing aspects of stupidity is its coexistence with intelligence. Highly educated individuals, experts in their fields, frequently fall prey to irrational beliefs or behaviors. Scientists deny climate change. Doctors propagate pseudoscience. Academics embrace conspiracy theories. How can this be? If intelligence equips us with tools for reasoning, why does it fail to protect us from stupidity? Bonhoeffer addressed this paradox by distinguishing between intellect and wisdom. Intellect refers to the capacity for abstract reasoning, problem solving, and knowledge acquisition. Wisdom, however, encompasses broader qualities: humility, empathy, self-awareness, and moral judgment. Intelligence without wisdom is like a ship without a rudder, capable of great speed but lacking direction. It allows us to analyze data, construct arguments, and solve puzzles, but it does not guarantee ethical conduct or sound decision-making. Without wisdom, intelligence becomes a tool that can be wielded for good or ill. Psychological research supports this distinction. Studies show that high cognitive ability correlates with better performance on tasks requiring logical reasoning, but does not necessarily predict moral behavior. Intelligent people are just as susceptible to biases, prejudices, and temptations as anyone else. In fact, their confidence in their own abilities sometimes makes them more vulnerable to stupidity. Believing themselves immune to error, they dismiss warnings, ignore feedback, and double down on flawed conclusions. This phenomenon, known as the intelligence trap, highlights the dangers of unchecked intellect. Consider the case of financial markets. Traders armed with advanced algorithms and sophisticated models routinely make catastrophic mistakes, driven by greed, hubris, or herd mentality. Their technical expertise blinds them to the human factors: fear, ambition, irrational exuberance, that drive market fluctuations. Similarly, technologists developing artificial intelligence often overlook ethical implications, focusing solely on functionality and efficiency. Their brilliance creates tools that reshape the world, yet their short-sightedness sows seeds of chaos. To bridge the gap between intelligence and wisdom, we must cultivate emotional intelligence alongside intellectual prowess. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing and managing our emotions, empathizing with others, and navigating social dynamics effectively. It enables us to connect with people, understand diverse perspectives, and act with compassion. When combined with intellectual rigor, emotional intelligence fosters balanced decision-making, reducing the likelihood of stupidity. Mindfulness practices offer another pathway to integration. By training ourselves to observe thoughts and feelings without attachment, we develop greater awareness of our biases and triggers. We learn to pause before reacting, giving ourselves space to evaluate options and consider consequences. This practice enhances both cognitive flexibility and emotional regulation, equipping us to handle complexity with grace and insight. Education systems have a role to play as well. Rather than prioritizing test scores, schools should emphasize holistic development, teaching students how to think critically, communicate effectively, and collaborate respectfully. Courses on ethics, philosophy, and psychology could complement traditional subjects, providing frameworks for navigating ambiguity and uncertainty. Extracurricular activities like debate clubs, community service, and creative arts encourage exploration and experimentation, fostering curiosity and resilience. By nurturing both intellect and wisdom, we create individuals capable of resisting stupidity, not only in themselves, but also in the systems they inhabit. Such individuals serve as anchors of reason and morality, guiding society toward brighter horizons. Fear lies at the heart of stupidity, driving many of the choices that lead to irrationality and harm. Whether it stems from insecurity, uncertainty, or external threats, fear clouds judgment, distorts perception, and compels us to seek refuge in false certainties. Bonhoeffer understood this deeply, witnessing how fear enabled the rise of totalitarianism in Germany. Ordinary citizens, gripped by anxiety about economic instability, social upheaval, and foreign enemies, surrendered their autonomy to authoritarian leaders promising stability and security. Fear transformed intelligent, compassionate individuals into passive enablers of evil. Today, fear continues to shape human behavior in profound ways. Social media platforms exploit our anxieties, using algorithms to amplify divisive content that keeps users engaged. News outlets sensationalize stories to capture attention, fueling panic and paranoia. Advertisers prey on insecurities, selling products as solutions to imagined problems. Together, these forces create a culture of perpetual unease, where fear drives consumption, compliance, and conflict. Fear manifests differently depending on context. In personal relationships, it leads to defensiveness, mistrust, and avoidance. Couples argue instead of communicating. Friends withhold support instead of offering help. Families suppress emotions instead of addressing issues. Over time, unresolved fears strain bonds, eroding trust and intimacy. In professional settings, fear stifles innovation, discouraging employees from taking risks or proposing novel ideas. Managers prioritize control over creativity. Workers prioritize survival over excellence, and organizations stagnate under the weight of unspoken apprehensions. On a societal level, fear fuels polarization, scapegoating, and violence. Political movements harness fear to rally supporters, demonizing opponents and exaggerating threats. Populist leaders exploit anxieties about immigration, globalization, and cultural change, positioning themselves as saviors against imagined enemies. Meanwhile, marginalized groups bear the brunt of backlash, targeted by policies and rhetoric rooted in ignorance and hatred. Fear divides communities, fracturing solidarity and undermining progress. Yet fear need not dictate our destiny. By confronting it head-on, we reclaim agency over our lives. Courage, as Bonhoeffer demonstrated, begins with acknowledging vulnerability. When we admit our fears, we disarm their power, transforming shame into strength. We realize that fear is universal, shared by all humans regardless of background or belief. This realization fosters connection, reminding us that we are never truly alone. Practical strategies for managing fear include mindfulness, exposure therapy, and reframing techniques. Mindfulness teaches us to observe fear without judgment, recognizing it as a transient emotion rather than an immutable truth. Exposure therapy gradually desensitizes us to triggers, building tolerance and resilience. Reframing transforms negative thoughts into positive affirmations, shifting focus from limitations to possibilities. Each method empowers us to navigate fear constructively, turning obstacles into opportunities for growth. Collective action amplifies individual efforts. Communities that foster open dialogue, mutual support, and shared purpose create environments where fear loses its grip. Initiatives like restorative justice programs, mental health advocacy, and interfaith dialogues promote healing and understanding, bridging divides and dispelling myths. By working together, we confront fear collectively, replacing isolation with inclusion, suspicion with trust, despair with hope. In overcoming fear, we unlock the door to wisdom. Fear narrows our vision, confining us to survival mode. Wisdom expands our perspective, enabling us to see beyond immediate concerns to long-term goals. It reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. That vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. That uncertainty is not chaos, but potential. By embracing fear as a teacher rather than a tyrant, we transcend stupidity, stepping into the light of clarity and compassion. As we reflect on the nature of stupidity and its pervasive influence, one question looms large. What kind of future do we wish to create? Will we allow stupidity to define us, perpetuating cycles of irrationality and harm? Or will we rise above it, forging a path toward wisdom, empathy, and progress? The choice is ours, and the stakes could not be higher. History offers cautionary tales and inspiring examples alike. Civilizations that succumbed to stupidity collapsed under the weight of their own contradictions, leaving ruins as testament to wasted potential. Those that embraced wisdom flourished, contributing art, science, and philosophy that endure across millennia. Today, we stand at a crossroads, facing challenges unprecedented in scale and complexity. Climate change, technological disruption, geopolitical instability, all demand responses grounded in reason and morality. Failure to meet these challenges with wisdom invites catastrophe. Success promises renewal. Meeting this moment requires nothing less than a global awakening. Education must evolve to prioritize critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. Media must commit to accuracy, accountability, and inclusivity. Governments must enact policies that balance short-term needs with long-term sustainability. Businesses must adopt practices that respect people and planet alongside profit. And individuals must take responsibility for their roles in shaping society, making choices aligned with values rather than convenience. This transformation begins with each of us. By resisting stupidity in our daily lives, questioning assumptions, challenging norms, seeking truth, we contribute to a larger movement. Our actions inspire others, creating ripple effects that multiply exponentially. Together, we build momentum, pushing back against forces that seek to divide, deceive, and destroy. Let us imagine a world where stupidity has no place. A world where children grow up encouraged to ask questions, explore ideas, and dream boldly. Where adults engage in respectful discourse, valuing diversity and dissent. Where leaders prioritize integrity over ambition, serving humanity rather than exploiting it. Such a vision may seem distant, even impossible, given current realities. Yet history shows us that change is always possible, that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when united by purpose and passion. So let us choose wisely. Let us reject the seductive allure of stupidity, the ease of conformity, the comfort of denial, the illusion of certainty. Let us embrace the discomfort of critical thought, the challenge of empathy, the beauty of uncertainty. Let us dare to dream, to act, to resist. For in doing so, we reclaim not only our minds, but our humanity. And so, I leave you with this final reflection. Stupidity is not destiny. It is a choice, one we can reject, resist, and replace with wisdom. The journey ahead will not be easy, nor will it be quick, but it is necessary, urgent, and profoundly worthwhile. Together, let us walk this path, step by step, toward a brighter, wiser future. For ourselves, for each other, for generations yet unborn.